Indiana Disability History Project, Center on Aging and Community, Indiana Institute on Disability and Community, Indiana University.
So the first story is, tell me about school and the teacher that told you that you needed to remember your place when you went to learn how your sister got her job as a
Yeah.
laundromat.
I was in high school at school, and then my sister was working in the laundromat. And then I used to come down there and watch her. And then I went asked my teacher, I said, couldn't I get a job like that? Because she swept the floors and cleaned out the dryers and stuff like that. And she said that I couldn't get a job like that because my kind of people had to learn all kind of plays. And I always wondered, what did she mean by that? Why couldn't I get a job like that? I mean, how hard it is to sweep the floor and clean out the dryers, clean out the lint from the dryers and stuff. But she said, she always said that, and I always wondered, and it kept going over in my mind, you know, that it was, other people was better than I was, you know, I mean, couldn't I get a job, a kind of job that I dream of, like, and stuff, and she just kept going over and over in my mind, she's saying that, and all.
So she didn't help you get that job?
No, she didn't. She just said that they stuck me into a workshop without. They just said when I turned 18, excuse me, the principal told me when I turned 18 that I couldn't go to school no more. And then 2 days later, I got a letter that said that I was going into Goodwill's workshop. Nobody asked me if I would like to go into the workshop, and nobody asked me what I wanted to do or anything. They just sent me to the workshop. And then I was in Goodwill for a while. The next thing I know, I got another letter that said that I was going to Crossroads workshop. Then I went to Crossroads workshop and stuff, and then the plant that I was at Crossroads there shut down. And then they send everybody to different workshops, and they send me to Noble. And none of the times, nobody never asked me what I wanted to do, if I wanted to go to the workshop, or if I wanted to see about an outside job, or what I wanted to. Or even asked me how I felt about it and stuff. But nobody never did ask me. I always wondered about that.
How'd that make you feel?
It made me feel awful low. It made me didn't feel like I was important to do anything or involved in thinking and stuff. Because of my disability, I didn't think that, you know, my thoughts counted, you know, because I was disability, I thought. I thought that's something that, you know, that happened because I was born disability.
Okay. Well, can you tell me about school and wanting to study math and your teacher telling you needed recess time?
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to learn how to count and stuff, add and stuff like my sisters did, and then when they had their math and stuff, and their little classes at their schools and stuff. And my mom bought me some flashcards, and me and another student was sitting on the porch practicing numbers from the flashcards that's adding and stuff. Teacher came and took them away from us and told us it wasn't work time, school time, it was play time. And they said that we could not learn count and stuff. We had to learn to stay on the porch and it was time to play. I thought, we're not children, you know. My sister don't have no porch and stuff to play on and stuff, and she don't have to, can't practice her numbers and stuff and then learning how to add and stuff. And I said, well, I guess that comes along with being disability, you know, because they never said nothing different and stuff. Just like I wanted to type, and the lady from the regular high school came over and brought a typing thing over for the kids to type, and they said, nope, we could not have that typing class. That's only for regular people, not for us kind of people. And I thought, that's again, they bring that up, us kind of people. What they mean by the us kind of people? I mean, is there something wrong with us or something?
So back then, you probably weren't speaking up as much as you do now.
I didn't speak up at all. I just let them tell them. Even when we went to the workshop, the social worker came to my mom and said that we had to do something about me because I was so quiet. I wouldn't talk to nobody. I sat by myself and all. Now they're trying to find out how to shut me up. I talk too much.
So do you think it was some of those experiences of these questions going on in your mind and you not speaking up about like what you're saying, those kind of people, that helped you get motivated to do self-advocates?
Yeah, because we found out from listening to other people and stuff, and then I finally got to know that even with my disability and all, that we had the right to do stuff and all. And that's when we got self-evidence, and when we got to start talking about self-evidence and stuff, and that's why I said I was going to let other people not to get pushed around and start talking for them as the ones that can talk for themselves and help them out.
Okay, good. Well, now, Nikki, I know, is 19.
Yeah.
Right? So do you think her school experience has been different than your school experience?
A little bit. It's a lot better. It's a little bit better than it was my school experience. She got to learn how to read.
Wait. Yeah, we need to talk about Nikki.
Yeah, well, I mean, what you're going with is fine, but say your niece's name.
Okay.
Okay.
Because, yeah, Peggy, we're not going to hear Nikki
Okay.
say. You could say, I think it's different now with Nikki's school experience than mine because. Okay. So tell me how the school experience is different for Nikki.
Nikki, my niece, is a little better for her than it was for me. She got to learn how to read and write and stuff, but not quite as better because they took the tour to the regular children, took them to tours to colleges and stuff, but they wouldn't let them go. They made them stay in the homeroom and stuff because they said that they wouldn't take them and stuff, like they act like they wasn't qualification enough. It's like they took the regular students to Kings Island and stuff, but they wouldn't let the disability children go and stuff. And that's a lot, we got to do a lot of more changes and stuff. We still got a lot of changes to do. And hopefully, I got a great nephew is disability. Hopefully, when he gets bigger and stuff, hopefully with a lot of changes we got going on, that when he gets to go to school and stuff, because he's only 3, that there will changes to be put in place that he can want to go to Kings Island, he can go to Kings Island and stuff, and he can be just like the regular students and see the different colleges and stuff.
Do you think many kids in school are speaking up? Does Nikki speak up?
Yeah, Nikki, my niece Nikki, she speaks up. She even told her teacher, she got to go to one of my conferences, and she really enjoyed herself and stuff. And she went and told her teacher, she says, my aunt goes to classes and stuff for self-evidence, and disability people speaks up and stuff for themselves and stuff. And I want to know why we can't do the things other kids do. She even brought our handbook to her teacher and stuff. And her teacher had to show the other kids the handbook and stuff. And then got to go to an amusement park just for them children. And just before they graduate, they got to go and stuff. Because Nikki spoke up for the other kids from going to the classes and stuff, going to the conferences and the classes and stuff, and listening to me and stuff.
So you've been a good influence on Nikki.
I hope so, because I want Nikki to know not to go through what I had to go through in school and stuff. And I want other children to learn that they can do things and stuff and graduate, because I didn't get to graduate. And lucky my niece Nikki got to graduate with other classes and stuff. It's like a regular person and stuff. Like when my niece graduated from junior high, they separate the children. They call the disability children moonwalkers and the other children regular. And the other children got roses, but the disability children didn't get no roses and stuff. And then I thought that was so wrong. I even said something to the principal and stuff, what do you think, the children was some kind of outer space or something, calling them moonwalkers because of his disability and stuff. But I made sure that she got a rose, because I went and bought her a rose because she can be special and stuff too. and she got a junior high graduation dress just like the other kids, because she can look just as pretty as they did, the other children, and act special and stuff. And and she got to do things that the other children thought she couldn't do because she's disability. She learned how to dry. She learned how to cook for herself. She learned how to take care of herself, clean house, wash clothes and stuff that people didn't think she could do because she was disability and stuff. But she showed them that she can do and stuff. And then I want people to know that, just because you're disability and stuff, that you can do the things that other children does, and that other people takes for granted things you can't do and stuff. Think you need to be put into a nursing home or a group home or even an institution and stuff because of your disability and stuff. I want them to know that, because of that, it don't mean you have to couldn't get your own house or get your own apartment and stuff. Even you might need help and stuff, And that other people take for granted that things like that, you can do and stuff. But I want them to know they can do it.
You're a good aunt, Darcus.
Yeah.
You're a really good aunt. Well, I also know you've done some traveling.
Yes.
And you've been to Washington, D.C. a couple times.
Yeah.
And the first time you got the President's Award, right?
Yeah, I got the Victorian Award at Washington, D.C.
Can you tell me about that award and what it meant to receive it?
It was really neat. I mean, I got to go to Washington, D.C., something I never got to go, and got to stay in a fancy hotel, something I never got to do and stuff, and got a Victorian Award for achievement, showing people the things that I can do for disability and stuff. We stayed in the Watergate Hotel. We got our room broken into just like anybody else and stuff. And showed people that even because of my disability and stuff, I got to be treated just like anybody else. Got to go to the Kennedy Center, and got a beautiful dress that the Noble had the bookkeeper at Noble made for me, and the ladies' lead paid for me, made me feel like Cinderella with a fancy dress and all.
Oh, that's great. So what did it mean to you to get this award?
It made me show people that even my disability didn't stop me from being just like anybody else. I got an award from the president. I got to go to the White House. I had lunch with the president and his wife and stuff. And it showed people that even with my disability and stuff, and that people think you can do stuff because of your disability, I got to do things just like anybody else and got treated just like anybody else.
Do you know how you got this award? Who nominated you? Or
Noble nominated me for my achievement for my self-evidence and for showing people that what I could do and stuff.
Was this the first time you'd been out of the state?
Yeah, that's the first time. I was 30-some years old, the first time I ever got to stay in a hotel, first time I ever got to go to a fancy restaurant and stuff. My mom was like any other mother. She didn't think I should do it at first because staying overnight in a hotel because of my disability, because I'm diabetic and all. And I showed her that I promised her when I got there I would call her and stuff. I thought it was so strange because my helper wasn't disability and she had to call her mom too, and I thought, wow, ain't that something? I'm disability and got to call my mama. She's not disability and she had to call her mama too. And I just showed people that I got to stay overnight in a fancy hotel. I got to go out to a restaurant and stuff. People with not disabilities takes for granted that stuff like that. The way to travel and all. I remember the first time I got to go on a plane. I said I would never go on a plane, but there's a conference that I helped plan for, and I wanted to go very mad. And my helper said, the only way we're going to get to go is on a plane. And I said, I don't know about that. But I took the brave and went on that plane. I got in that seat, and I didn't get up from that seat. And I got a little bit braver when we changed planes and stuff.
Well, good for you. And you went to Washington, D.C. again recently, Can you tell me about that trip?
I can't remember
I
it.
don't think it was recently. It was the one where you and
Betty
Betty.
Nims?
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't that in the last few years? So,
But so much happened since then.
okay.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Me and Betty, we asked to go to a conference in Washington, D.C. again. This time we didn't have no helpers. We're going to go on our own. Some people were supposed to meet us, me and Betty, our president of Disabilities of Indiana, and we were supposed to meet us. They did not meet us. Nobody met us at the hotel. I had some money on my calling card. I kept on calling all these hotels and stuff and see if they had us registered. Nobody had us registered. Betty had some money saved on her credit card, and we got the cheapest hotel we could, and we took a cab. And then we finally called the people that sponsored us, and then they told us where the rally was going to be at. Me and Betty drug ourselves down to the train station to take the train underneath and got to the rally and stuff. And then we got there to get our way home and got booked into a storm. And then we had to switch planes and stuff because the plane that was supposed to take us wasn't going to take us home and stuff. But if we didn't know about self-advocacy and how to do this and stuff, we wouldn't know how to book a hotel or how to get to the place we was having a conference and stuff like that. Because we always would depend on our helpers and stuff, and I depend on other people to help us. There was nobody there to help us. We had to depend on ourselves. Something that nobody thought we could do. Really, we didn't think we could do it ourselves, and we thought we were shocked we did it.
Well, good for you. Did you feel proud of yourself?
Yes, we did. We felt really proud of ourselves.
So is there anything else we want to know about that piece? We have that pretty covered. Okay. Well, I know a pretty long time ago your mom died.
Yes.
We talked about that, and then your house burned down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I remember hearing that you had to use your insurance to pay for bills or pay for things instead of building your house. Is that right?
Yeah. When my mom died, our house got burned down, and then I had to take the money that was supposed to build the house, pay for doctor bills and medicines and stuff that had to be done and stuff because didn't have the insurance to take care of the medicines and stuff, and I had to have so many different medicines and stuff, and they kept on adding up and adding up.
Now, did you have a contractor somewhere in here help you?
Yeah, we had a contractor, and they always told me, everybody always said, you call the Better Business Bureau. Okay, I thought I was being smart. I called the Better Business Bureau, and they said these people was fine. They even built out a contract and everything. And they sure got ripped off. They took all my mom's and my life savings, $1,000 for down payment. They ripped out the bathroom because they were supposed to make it handicap accessible for my mom because she was in the wheelchair. They tore off the porch. They were supposed to make it a ramp and stuff. And then they just left it there. And they told her a pipe was in the bathroom because it was an old house, and found out it was an old sewer line. And that the bathroom, the basement was full of sewer and stuff. And we had to take another loan to put back the bathroom, to take care of the sewer lines and stuff, and put in a porch and stuff. We couldn't find nobody to help us with get a ramp and stuff up there and stuff. And then the police department wouldn't help us find the people. And then when we found the people, and then I went back up there to the detectives, and they said, and then the detective told his boss not to pay no attention to me. I didn't know what I was talking about. He said, that person, she worked at Noble. You know how them kind of people are. And that person got away with all their money. And then Noble had a newspaper person came out to talk to me about it, and they put it in the paper and stuff. And then there was oodles of people, disability people and senior citizens and stuff called us and said that they got ripped off from the same people. They did the same things to them and stuff. And then that's when I started working for back home in Indiana and let them know and stuff, because figuring out and stuff, to let them people know that when they get in my house and stuff of their own, not to go through what I had to go through with the contractor. And not only that, for the people that comes out to buy your home and stuff, and you pay them so much money to check out your home and stuff, and then the lady, we paid her $300 to check out the home, and then found out, she said there was no reason to just go down the basement to check out the basement, and found out the basement had all bad pipes and stuff. And that first winter we lived there, all the pipes busted, and we had to scrape up the money to get the pipes fixed and stuff. And that's what I told the people from the back home in Indiana when helping disability people find homes and stuff, for not to go through the experience that I had to go through, that me and my mom had to go through.
What did you do for back home in Indiana?
I thought, do you want to get a drink?
Yeah.
Okay, so what did you do with back home in Indiana?
I was on the board of directors to help people find, the disability people find homes of their own, and then help them go through what to go through with, to make sure that they didn't go through the experience that I had to go through and stuff, and help them find homes and stuff, and tell them all the things that would come up with, when they go look for a home and stuff.
Now, did you get some help with back home in Indiana finding your own home?
I didn't have when it was time, the money that we put away, we had to use it. I didn't have the money and stuff to get a home of our own at the time.
So how do you think things have worked out for you in finding homes? Has it been difficult or hard?
At the time, that there was no place that was fixed. At the time when we were looking for a place for back home in Indiana, that it was disability enough for us, for me and stuff. That because of me and my chair and stuff, and then thank God there are places out there now that they got homes and stuff they're working on and stuff, fixing for wheelchair accessible and stuff. And but when I was looking for a place and stuff, they didn't have no place like that.
What's been your experience in trying to find a decent place to live?
And stuff, being accessible and stuff. That houses that I'm living in now and stuff, that it took them a year for them to get a ramp for me go up and down there. Mostly my niece had to help me out the door and stuff, and then take my chair and bring it out the door for me.
Yeah, because I've come to visit you several different places or pick you up, and you've had lots of steps. In that one place you lived on the second floor, and you've had
Yeah.
a lot of, so is it hard to find good housing?
Yeah, and it's for because I only get Social Security, and it's hard to find places that is accessible or that you can afford and stuff. That because you're on this fixed income and stuff, and the houses is so high to find a place and stuff. The one we got now, it's a nice house, it's a nice big house and stuff, and then it's only costs us $600 a month, but we only have to pay us the lights and the gas. The landlord pays the water and the sewage and for us, because of a lot of the places and stuff. And then we got, and the place I like now, because the landlord allowed me to have an animal. The other place paid the same amount and stuff, but he wouldn't allow me to have animals, and I love my animals.
What animals do you have?
I have a dog that my niece got from the Maine Society. She went to pick him out. Her name is Sarah. And we got a kitty cat, and her name is Angel. And we got another dog named Sam.
So how do you find these houses? I mean, how do you go about finding one?
We look in the paper, and a lot of times that my sisters we go just driving around to find one, because a lot of the ones that you can afford and stuff, you just have to go around looking and stuff to find and stuff, and then you just have to hopefully take a chance, find one that is cheap enough that you can rent and stuff, and it's hard. That's why we have to move around so much and stuff. That the places that it's the rent goes up, and that the landlord don't want to fix nothing and all, or it's just not accessible and stuff. Like before, I had to go in my wheelchair and stuff, and I said had to move. I lived in an apartment, and I could afford and stuff after my mom passed away, and it's a 2-story apartment there, but my sister and my niece went round and round with the landlord because she did not have no fire extinguishers or anything, and she was worried because there was only one door and stuff, and she was worried that there was a fire and stuff, and I had so much trouble getting down and stuff that get caught upstairs in the fire. I mostly just stayed upstairs in my bedroom and stuff. I didn't go out and stuff, Holly. And
are you eligible for Section 8, Darcus?
yeah, but you're on a waiting list.
So, have you applied for Section 8?
Yeah, we applied for Section 8 before we got this apartment there because I was so on the waiting list. I just heard that from the waiting list for Medicaid, they had asked me if I still wanted to stay on the waiting list. And they had to give me a number to call to tell them everything's the same and all, and I still want to stay on the waiting list.
When did you sign up for Section 8? Do you know?
See, my mom's house burned down. Our house burned down 5 years ago.
So you've been signed up for Section 8 for 5 years?
Yeah. And then we got this house here, this landlord, he made the house accessible for me. He fixed the bathrooms for me, fixed the special balls and stuff in there for me. And they even fixed the back porch for I can go out in the backyard and stuff for me. And that he had it. The front porch is accessible, for I can go out and sit on the front porch. Like the other day when it was so pretty and stuff, my great nephew and nieces, I got to sit on the porch and watch him out in the front yard play and stuff, you know. Mostly I just stay in my bedroom and stuff, or I'll stay inside the house because it's so hard for me to get in and out and stuff. But he's a pretty good landlord. He fixed everything, tried to make it more accessible and everything for me.
Do we need a sentence that says something like I've been in Section 8? Okay, can you say a whole sentence that pretty much says I applied for Section 8 5 years ago and I'm still on the waiting list?
I filed for Section 8 5 years ago and I'm still on the waiting list.
Would you stay where you live indefinitely if you could? Do you like it well enough to stay there a while?
Yeah, I like the house I live in now, and I would stay there indefinitely if I could. So.
Tell me about your neighborhood.
I live over there by Garfield Park, and then now since I got electric wheelchair and stuff, and I got a ramp and stuff, I can go over to the park and stuff, and my neighborhood's nice and quiet, all but the factory across the street and stuff. And but you know, it's only open in the daytime and stuff. It's not open at night and stuff. But the neighbors really nice and stuff, and they look out for everybody and stuff. Couldn't ask for a better neighborhood.
Good. So you know some of your neighbors?
Yes.
Do you socialize with them?
I talk to them and stuff when it's pretty and stuff. Like Monday when I was out there waiting on the open door for the doctor and stuff, I talked to the couple who lives down the street.
Okay. Cool.
When we drop you off, maybe we'll take a few pictures of your house.
Bring the camera forward. Okay. Okay. Well, your health seems so much better. You know, I've told you a couple times how good you looked walking down and how much stronger you seem and your color's better.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what it's like to deal with the medical professionals?
Yeah, I mean, this new hospital that I go into.
They don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
So.
It's hard for the hospitals and stuff because the new hospital I go into, that the doctor sit there, I got so much water on my body and stuff. They took 100 pounds of water off of me. and stuff, but I had to be put in the hospital to get it off of me. And then they found out that I have bone disease in my legs and stuff, and they found out that the other hospital that I went to, all it told me was from my diabetic, and it found out it told me that it could have been taken care of a long time ago, and it wouldn't cut as bad as it did. But he's taking care of it with medicine. But it's hard to get a good doctor that understands about your disability and stuff, or listen to you and stuff. Or the hospitals, like when my toe had to be amputated and stuff, or had to be amputated off, and the bandages had to be changed and stuff. My wheelchair would not fit into the rooms that to do it, and then they changed the bandages out in the hall there. And it was so embarrassing to have people watching and stuff, because it was hard for me to even look at it. Or when they had to put a cast on my hand and stuff, they had to stick me in the utility room to put the cast on, because my chair would not fit into the rooms and stuff. But they had the new hospital we went to that I was really shocked that when they sent me down to the lab there, I said, no way my chair was going to get in the room. And then they had a special other half of the door that opened up for put on the door there. And then same way with the bathroom stuff. And the elevators was great big too. Now the doctor's office could be bigger with just very room to get into it and stuff. But the hospitals finally look like they finally started listening to the disability people and stuff, and starting to make the hospitals and stuff more accessible and stuff. And it takes so long to get the doctors and the nurses and stuff to listen to us. When you go to the hospital and you're disability and stuff, and you got somebody else with you and stuff asking you what's wrong with you and stuff, they look at the other person and ask them and stuff. Like my niece went with me to the hospital and stuff. And the doctor asked my niece what was wrong with me, if I taking my medicine, if I'm running any fevers and stuff. And I was sitting right there like I was a stranger, or like I was invisible and stuff. And I'm the one that's having aches and pains and stuff. So they asked me, but they didn't ask me, they asked her.
Did you speak up?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you need to,
Yeah, I know it's hard, but try and look over this way.
Okay.
so did you speak up when they were asking Mandy the questions?
Yeah, I told the doctor, I said, I'm here. I said, I ain't had no chills, I ain't run no fevers, but yes, I'm taking all my medicines and stuff. If you please don't give me no more medicines
Good for you.
and stuff. But I told him it was hard for me to purchase all my medicines and stuff, because the last time I was in the hospital, that the social worker got my medicines to hold me for a month, and it was $500 worth of medicines.
Well, I know you really helped a lot in the poster that we made that said what people with disabilities would say to the medical profession, and you touched on some of those about having bigger chairs, talking to the people. But were there some other things that were important to you? Were you the person that had the suggestion about getting up on the tables? Or?
Yeah, because when I was in the hospital and stuff, and they want to check you out and stuff, no way I could get on the tables. The tables was way high, and there ain't no way. Because when my mom she's in a wheelchair, and she was an amputee and stuff, they had to have a security guard and another nurse to pick her up out of her chair and put her on the table and stuff, and then pick her up and put her back in the chair and stuff. And then I thought, if they could just fix the beds and stuff, where she can get in, and for the disability people can get up and down on the cots and stuff themselves, And they sure ain't fixed it. They did all these repairs and stuff to the hospitals and stuff, and they sure ain't fixed the cots and stuff now. Just like when you go in there to the eye doctors and stuff like that, to check your eyes and stuff there. You ain't no way that you can get in their chairs and stuff, or they can examine your eyes right and stuff.
So what do they do?
Uh,
Doctor.
they put you in a corner and they examine you best they can, but you know, get completely examination like you should, whether you would by the chairs and in the chairs or stuff.
So Darcus, if your medicines are that much, like you're saying, $500, how do you pay for all your medicines?
I just get what I can get, and then I don't get the rest, and that's
Say
Oh.
it,
They don't-
get my medicines.
okay.
Okay, let me ask you again. So how do you pay for everything?
I don't get my medicines. And so I have problems affording my medicines and stuff. That was why I had to end up back in the hospital the last time, because I had a heart attack because I wasn't getting my medicines and couldn't afford it.
So do your benefits not cover your medicines?
No, my insurance don't cover my medicines and stuff. I had to get that out of my own pockets.
So how are you supposed to do that?
I don't know how they expect disability people to afford that and stuff. Medicaid is supposed to help you with that, but I filled out all the papers for Medicaid, and even I had the doctor fill out everything for Medicaid, and then they kept on calling the worker and stuff, and she wouldn't return my calls, and then I just kept on getting the runaround and stuff, and then just did without none of my medicines and stuff. And I just kept on getting sicker, kept on going back and forth to the in and out of the hospitals.
Well, you're a pretty important person, to the state of Indiana. You represent a lot of people with disabilities. People value your opinion. They value you. You have a lot of connections around the state, because you know a lot of people. So why do you think it is still so hard for you, people who know people, to get this?
Because people's not listening to us. They say they're listening, and they say that they're going to help us, and they're going to do things for us, make it better for us, for people with disability and stuff. But it seems like it goes in one ear, out that ear. Or they put us on a waiting list, or they said they'll get back to us and have you fill out these papers and stuff. And they say, "Oh, I remember you. I'll get right back to you." And then a year later, "Oh, I still ain't got back to you yet, has I?" And so
How do you feel?
it makes me feel like I'm not important, like my health's not important to them. They don't care that that if I get better, I'll get worse and stuff. It seems like my feelings don't matter, or my health don't care or matters and stuff.
Well, when you think about your whole life in terms of support and money and funding and that sort of things, do you wish there were some areas that were better?
Yeah, I wish there was a lot of things, better funding and stuff out there for people. Funding for people can do things, better funding out there for health rights, for people for health rights and stuff, not only for that, for people with disability and stuff, like, they worry about their health and stuff, and they should be funding things out there. But they don't think that disability people don't think that they should only worry about their health and stuff, but they think that they like to have fun too, that there should be some kind of organization that pay for them to go on trips and stuff, to go just like other people get to go with disability. It's not disability.
Well, let's personalize it a little bit to your life. So if you could think about just your life, do you think there's some areas that you wish were better, or you had some more help?
Yeah, I wish it was better for my medicines, better things for my health rights and stuff. Like I got a walker for around the house and stuff, but I can't use it to do my cooking and stuff because I ain't got no basket or anything to put my food and stuff in. But my niece got to do my cooking and stuff for me, and then that makes me feel bad because I like to do things for myself and stuff. Not only me, but other disability people like to do things and stuff. Now, when I was in the hospital and doing the therapy and stuff, I seen they had these baskets hooked onto the walkers and stuff like that. And I called the social worker but she never did return my calls, and she said that she's mostly only for the people that's in the hospital. I said, I guess I have to wait till I get back in the hospital before I can get any more help.
You know, hearing all these stories, and you've gotten to run around a lot, it must make you feel really frustrated. What keeps you just going and not just giving up?
Because I was hoping.
Look over here, sorry.
Okay, because I not to give up and stuff, because I hope and keep on hoping that that the people finally will listen to us and stuff. And my groups, my self-happiness group, keeps me going, because I like going to my meetings. I like meeting my friends and stuff, and like hearing things that other guys people is doing and stuff. And hopefully that that all city in Indianapolis get to do these things that other cities and stuff doing and all. And finally maybe these legislatures and stuff will finally saying that for the people with disability, finally say, yes, we are, and we'll listen to you and stuff. And we'll start doing things.
But like Peg said, what keeps you from just screaming? I've done this for 10 years. Or I've done this for
I don't know. I just keep on hoping and hoping that things like that will change and stuff. That's all I do. All I can get to keep on doing. Just keep on hoping.
Do you think life for people with disabilities has changed in your lifetime?
A lot of things has changed, but not very much. I mean, they keep on saying things that's going to get better and stuff, but seems like they're not. Seems like if you take one step forward, they kick you back 2 more steps backwards.
Can you give me some examples?
Okay, like now with the health thing, they finally seem like they started helping out with the help with your medicines and stuff like that. But the doctor bills is eating me up with more and more doctor bills and stuff. I mean, from when I was in the hospital and stuff, I got a bill that says I owe them $5,798.83, and want to know how arrangements I can make. They're going to pay that and stuff. Like I get help for medicines now, but we're going to need help now with the medical bills. Because it seems like that. I mean, you get help with something else, and something else needs help with.
And housing or services or transportation, have you seen any changes in any of those areas?
I mean, we've been working in Indianapolis, we've been working with Open Door, because we've been having a lot of trouble with Open Door and stuff. That Open Door is not doing like they're supposed to. I mean, dropping people off places that they're supposed to be dropping them off, or not picking them up like they should and stuff. But they all finally starting to listen to us and stuff like that. Like Greyhound. Now, we work so hard with Greyhound, finally get the buses and stuff accessible and stuff. But now they cut the services to Greyhound, and bunch of the little towns and stuff is got the services cut there and stuff. And then people is all disability and stuff lives there and stuff, and wants to come out for statewide meetings or is on the board of directors and stuff like that. Can't do it now because there ain't no transportation for them.
So if I were to ask you what areas that you think the service system falls short or is still failing, what would you say?
Transportation. Transportation is a big problem with a lot of the people for disability and stuff, because they don't know how to drive, some of them don't and stuff. And that if they want to go places or stuff like that, they can't go because of transportation and stuff.
What about housing?
Now, housing, sure, they're working on it, and they are doing a lot of things and fixing it up and stuff for the people for disability and stuff. But it's so much red tape and stuff they have to go through and all to get in there. And then they get these apartments to put them in and stuff, and they don't take care of the apartments and stuff, and they all run down and stuff. Like downtown, like one of the HUD apartments downtown. There are two of the big buildings and stuff that my girlfriend lives at and stuff. They're talking about selling them to IU for the people for IU to live there and stuff, and that they don't know where the people is going to go and lives in the apartments and stuff, and that there's so much work that got to be done to the places and stuff like that, and there's not only that safe rise and stuff. They got rid of the security to watch out to make sure for security and stuff for them, to make sure they're safe and stuff. They got rid of that. And like their life's not important for the security reasons and stuff like that. And like they go overboard for checking people out for to live in the group homes and stuff, and like that, and they supposed to watch out for them and stuff, like make sure they're safe for the people and stuff. But they're not doing it and stuff. They're not watching them and stuff. They're not worried about the people is in the group homes and stuff like that, or is in being safe and stuff. All the drivers and stuff being checked and stuff for safe and stuff. But they all are doing the people is in schools and stuff. They watch the drivers and make sure they ain't got no DIs and drinking and driving and stuff. But I know they don't do that for the group homes and stuff, and they don't watch the staff and stuff for the group home and stuff, and seeing the people is not getting mistreated and stuff. It seems like, you know, they're not paying a lot. They're not worried to get who they can get in there to watch them because they don't worry about the money deal.
You want to take a drink again?
Yeah.
The trick is that you have to keep looking at it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But if I do this, that means you're looking over at
Okay.
Peg.
Yeah.
Crooked in the camera.
Okay.
All right. So you were talking about things where you feel that the service systems fall short: transportation, health care, the sort of staff they get in. If you could sit down with the governor.
Mm-hmm.
and-
Oh boy.
Yeah. All right. I want you to pretend like I'm the governor and tell me what you would say.
I know that we had, you know, the worry about money deals and stuff like that. And,
We don't know who you're talking to.
Oh.
So you could just say, okay, I'd like to say to the governor.
I like to say to the governor, I know that, you know, the worry about money deals and stuff like that, you know, but don't they all health just as much as important as cut back, all these cutbacks and stuff, because you're cutting back the safety of the people is in the group home, safety that people, transportation, health rise, and health rise for them, and that you're not worried, you act like you worry about everything else and stuff, and you seem like you're not really worried about us because we're disability and stuff, you know, that like our life's not important and stuff, you know. I mean, that you worry about the, you know, the schools and all that, and that, but you seem like when it comes to people for disability and stuff, it seems like we feel like we're second-hand citizens and stuff. That you should start worrying about us too, you know, and stop worrying so much about money-wise and stuff, you know. There's so much, you know, you can do for cuts and stuff, but there's so much you do if the cuts and it fails with safety-wise.
Well, I'm going to follow up on what Peggy was asking you a minute ago. I mean, you were always so pleasant. And you're always in such a good mood and cheerful and positive, and I know you have a lot of hope. And the only time I have ever even seen you not be 100% happy or pleasant is when you didn't feel all that good.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, that's to be very expected. But do you feel, despite all this, that the service system in Indiana and what Indiana offers people with disability has let you down?
A lot. I think people, you know, the services and stuff, what people do, disability and stuff, let us down a whole lot, you know.
We would start off with the service system has let us down. Okay.
The service Service Center has let us down a whole lot. They ain't seem like they care about us and all. They say they do. They say they're going to do so much to help us out and stuff. But then when it comes down to it, it seems like they just don't worry about us.
Can you give me some examples about you personally?
Okay, like they said, like in all this time that they were supposed to help me out with my medicines and stuff like that. They kept on telling me, as soon as I get these papers filled from the doctor, you know, they were going to be helping me out with my medicines and stuff. I got all the papers filled out with the doctor and stuff. I got it into them and stuff. I even had the doctor fax it to them personally. And I even checked in to make sure they got the papers and stuff. And then they told me that, you know, it would be only a couple of months and stuff, you know. And then I call back and keep on calling and calling and calling. And then they keep on giving me the runaround. They won't return my calls. I leave messages and stuff, or they wouldn't return my calls and stuff, or they say that I had to wait and stuff. And I keep on calling them, and I tell them, I say, you know, I can't afford my insulin because I don't got the money for my insulin, you know, what I'm going to do and stuff, you know. And she says, you know, I don't know what we're going to do about it. It won't be very long and stuff. And that went on like that for 5 years, that they kept on saying they were going to get me medicine and stuff. I had to be stuck in a nursing home before I could at least get some of my medicines and stuff. And when I was in a nursing home, at least I got my medicines and stuff. And then I look like I, you know, saying to myself, do I have to spend my whole life into a nursing home just to get my medicines and stuff? Or that I has a bag and tell them that Darcus Nims is her here, you know, and she's waiting on some help, you know, and stuff. And I don't want to be stuck in a nursing home. I don't want to be stuck in an institution and stuff like that. I just want to live on my own, or live with my niece or something, just like anybody else does and stuff. I just wanted a little bit of help. I mean, help with my medicine and doctor bills and stuff, just like anybody else and stuff, you know, just like any other human being and stuff. But they think that, you know, that I'm not important and stuff because of my disability. That's why I feel like.
That was excellent. People are going to listen to that and cry.
Yeah.
Well, do you have anything to say about that in terms of housing?
And so,
You feel like you've been let down in terms of housing?
I mean, not only me, housing, problems with housing and stuff, other disability people and stuff, you know what I mean, that they are not taking care of them and stuff. They put them in these apartments and stuff. They're not taking care of the apartments and stuff. They're not worrying about the security and stuff. They cut all the security and stuff. And they worry about the safety and stuff of them, you know. These fancy apartments with these people that got all this money and stuff, they make sure that their lives are taken care of good with security and stuff. But because of your disability and stuff, they're not worrying about your lives and stuff for being for security's life taken care of and stuff, and the apartment's safe and stuff for you and all. They're not worried about it, you know, and it seems like, and another flag going up and saying, your disability, you got to take the back burner again.
What about jobs? Do you think service system has let people down with jobs?
Yes, I think they let people down to find jobs and stuff. You know, that they seem like they say that they're going to find you jobs and stuff. My niece, Nikki, you know, she graduated from high school and stuff, and that to go out, supposed to go out to see about some jobs and stuff, and going to find her a job and stuff. She still not found a job and stuff. And you get bored and stuff, just sitting at home and stuff. And you feel lonesome. You feel let down and stuff like, and you feel like they just want you to stick in the institutions or stick in group homes, you know, or stick you into the workshops and stuff. You want to get out of the workshop. You want to get an outside job and stuff. It's saying the workshop is there. You got a choice, workshop or nothing. And that's what it feels like, you know, and stuff. And you want to make yourself better and stuff, and make your life better, and worry up your and stuff. And they seem like they don't worry about it, you know. They just want to stick you back into the workshops, and they say the job coaches is there to help you find your outside jobs, and that's what we're worried for, to get your outside job, get you out of the workshops and stuff. They don't really mean that and stuff. They just worry about, you know, getting you someplace to keep you shut up, so you won't keep yourself hollering at them.
So really, things haven't changed. Do you think things have changed much since you got out of high school and Nikki's getting out of high school?
No, I don't think things changed a lot for jobs and stuff, and stuff to people, you know. I mean, it sure seems like they just want you to stick into the workshops and stuff. They say they don't, but it seems like they do, you know. Or transfer, they do find you a job, and if you ain't got the transportation, don't go out that far. Because this young lady that lives in the workshop now, they found her a real good job, but it's past Greenwood, and Open Door don't go out that far, and she goes Open Door and stuff.
Has Nikki been encouraged to go to the sheltered workshop?
Yeah, but her mom.
Starting to
Okay, yeah, they said they want Nikki to go to Goodwill, and then I told her mom. Her mom said no. You know, she didn't want her to get stuck into a workshop, because I tell her what goes on and stuff, and she said that she didn't want her to go through that experience. She wants her to go through the experience, but find the outside job. And so.
Is that enough on that topic? Okay, well, there's a couple questions that I know a while back or a long time ago, there was an issue with your bank account, and there was a mistake. Mary Beth was telling us a story on the way up, that you saw a mistake on your bank account, and you went in and somebody helped you with your checking account, that the statement was wrong. Do you remember that story?
Oh yeah, they helped me. When I had my bank statement said that I had so much was taken out of my bank and stuff, and I know it wasn't taken out and stuff, and then they was nice enough to help me. The lady was nice enough to sit there and help me figure out what happened and stuff, and that it was a computer error and stuff. But they kept on giving me the runaround on the phone and stuff, and then they wouldn't seem like they kept on thinking. They kept on saying they was right and I was wrong, and then they looked at me and they said, you know how to figure and stuff, you know, because your disability and stuff, you know, you can easily make that error and stuff. And I said, I know I didn't make that error and stuff. And the lady said, and this other lady said, we'll sit down and we'll see if we can help you out. And found out it wasn't me, it was a computer, and the computer made that error. But they kept on thinking I was right. They kept on saying they was right, because they didn't look at me as a person, they just looked at me as a disability person.
What did they say when they found out it was their error? Did they say?
They said that they apologized, they were sorry and stuff, but it still didn't make me feel any better, because they act like they made me feel like I was a liar, or that, you know, I didn't know how to handle my own money with coming out and stuff, because I mean, I ain't very good reader and stuff, but at least I know I do good in adding and stuff, and I know what was taken out of my checking account and what wasn't taken out of my checking account.
Good for you. Well, we were talking a little bit before we started taping about Easter Sunday and about your church. Can you tell me what your church means to you?
My church means to me that I get to go to church and stuff like any other person and stuff. I mean, get to worship the Lord and stuff, you know. I could tell you a story about when we was doing this training 10 years ago at Noble. We was doing a training with these parents and stuff. And then we did training with these other people which came, and we do the training, and we tell them about some of our hopes and dreams and wishes and stuff. And we tell them that, you know, we believe in the Lord real good, you know, and we go to church and stuff like that. And she said, "You're not angry at God from, you know, being disability like you are and stuff like that, and, you know, and you are a good Christian person and stuff." And I said, "Yeah, you know, I mean, I just like any other person, you know, I don't blame the Lord, you know, for me being crippled or all the problems I have and stuff and like that." And she said she was really shocked that us people being disability like that we'd be believing into the Lord and stuff like that, you know. And I was really thinking, you know, we wasn't different than anybody else, you know. She said, you know, because some of them was mentally handicapped and stuff, that she wouldn't think that they would be going to church and stuff like that. And like, I thought myself, oh, who she thought we are, you know. I mean, we just not like anybody else. We like to go to church and go out to eat and all like that and stuff, and let people know and stuff.
Well, you were talking about your preacher used you to help him figure out if the church was accessible. Can you talk about that?
We're building a new church, and at all church, the bathrooms wasn't quite wide enough for my chair and stuff, and and then I was telling the pastor about all the new things and stuff for the disability people and stuff, and he asked if I would help him, show him some things that the new church, when it getting built, can be fixed to make sure it's accessible for everybody and stuff. And we made sure that the bathroom doors to go in the bathrooms was wide enough. Made some extra wide bathrooms, and made sure the sinks and even the sinks was low enough for the wheelchairs to go under, and the paper towels was hitting the right, and the soap dispensers can be on the corners up way across there and stuff. And then the ramp to go up there it's fixed with granite, and it's not smooth for in the winter time and stuff for the ice and stuff and he made sure that the rooms was for the Sunday school rooms and stuff was real big enough and stuff, and for the people to go and stuff too. And they asked them my questions and stuff, and for the water fountains and stuff and all. And I said, wouldn't it be neat if everybody would ask a disability person how to make it special and stuff, like the dome, like the dome down in Indianapolis, the Hoosier Dome and stuff. It's supposed to be accessible, but it's really not, because it's hard for you to get around and stuff in your wheelchair and stuff, and it's hard for you to get into the restrooms and stuff. Even the bus thing, the bus service up here in Indianapolis and stuff, that when we had to go in there, the open door, you had to go in there and get your ID picture taken and stuff, and they make you do it and stuff. I could not go into the office because my chair wouldn't fit in the office. I had to sit out there in the hall with other people waiting and stuff. They ask you all this information and stuff. Couldn't get into the bathroom because the bathroom, you couldn't get your chair into the bathroom and stuff. And that's all supposed to be accessible and stuff, but none of them was accessible.
Well, I'm glad your preacher took the time.
Yeah.
Sounds like he really valued it.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel when your preacher asked you?
I thought it felt special, you know. I mean, he was really worried to make sure the new church was going to be accessible enough for us, for all disability people to come in and stuff like that. And you think that these other places, restaurants and all like that, would take the time to ask them and stuff, that, you know, and make sure it's accessible and stuff like that. And like they're telling you on TV, like that you're supposed to keep your Social Security number private and stuff, you know. Mm-hmm. Oh, we're up in up an open door when you had to fill out the application. They asked you all that information and stuff, and that I could not go into the business room for them to answer all the questions. All them people sitting outside there, they all know my social security number. They all know my telephone number and all that. You know, all that supposed to be kept private and stuff. And all them people know that and stuff. And not only me, there was 4 other disability people with wheelchairs could not go in there, and other people learned all the information. The government tells you supposed to be kept private, not to let other people know about it. They all know about it now.
Jeez, that's aggravating. So as a church, I want to talk about Easter Sunday when
Okay.
you were saying that after church you guys go out sometimes. Can you talk about what you do with the other church members after church?
We get together on Sundays after Sunday service, and then Thursday service and stuff. We go to the restaurants to eat and stuff. All of us goes, a big crowd and stuff, and we all go and we eat and stuff. And they don't see any difference in the ones that is disability and stuff, because we have 4 or 5 different people as there's in wheelchairs and special needs and stuff, and that they don't see no difference and stuff. We all get treated the same. We're all in the restaurant the same and stuff.
Is that fun?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, well, got one more question that I wrote down, then we can see if there's anything else we want to talk about. But you've had a really, really full life, and you've had a lot of things that have been important to you, and you've done a lot of important things. If you were to think about your proudest accomplishment, the thing you're most proud of, what would it be?
Getting self-evident started.
Okay, so can you put that in a sentence? I am
Most proudest thing it would be getting self-evident started. That's showing people all the special stuff that disability people can do, that all the things that, people can do as disability and stuff. I mean, showed that the school teachers, showed the business people, showed even the politicians and stuff, what disability people can do. They can hold a job, they can hold a family, they can hold a career, they can learn how to drive, they can learn how to cook and take care of family and stuff, Just like when I was in the workshop there, that the social worker told me that, because I was taking care of my mom, and then my niece would come to go chance to live with us, and she came to me and told me that I couldn't take care of my niece and take care of my mom too, and work and go to my meetings and stuff. And then I saw her in a while, and then I asked her, I said, don't you work? And she said, yeah. I said, don't you got a family to take care of? And she said, yeah. I said, don't you have to go to meetings and stuff like that? And she said, yeah. I said, there ain't no difference between me and you. This takes me a little bit longer to get them done. And I showed her that I took care of my mom. I took care of my niece. I went to my meetings. I kept my group going. I worked. And just like anything else, they didn't think I could do it and stuff. But I showed them, because I was disability and stuff, they say I couldn't do that and stuff. And I took my mom to her doctor's appointments and stuff. And even with the classes to learn about diabetic and stuff for my mom. And then when I turned to be a diabetic, I learned how special things had changed since what she was and all. And I even told people things that they could do that from the diabetic and stuff. When we was at a conference, a man, he was saying that his son was diabetic, and he was on the strict, and he only gets so much money, and how he didn't see how he has a hard time about food and stuff, and by different kinds of food and stuff. And I tell him that it would talk to me in classes that he can buy the regular peaches, just put them in a drainer, and drain them off with cold water, put them in a bowl, put them in ice bucket, get cold, and there ain't no difference in buying expensive peaches with NutraSweet and stuff in it, and it is that kind of peaches. And he said he did not know that, and I told him that his things that he could do to help his son and stuff for his diabetic, and his son could stay on his budget. Because I know I had to stick on a budget, and I had to worry about my diabetic.
Did you get the first sentence about the,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
that'll work?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, Darcus, is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't talked about? Anything recorded or anything?
You know, so
Story about the Am in Brown County?
All right, we didn't talk about that one. The Brown County story.
when I was little, my aunts always took my sisters and my brothers and stuff, took turns and taking them to Brown County and stuff, or took them out to eat and stuff. But she would never take me because of my disability. And I used to cry and stuff, and my mom used to tell me that, don't worry, I'm going to show them all, I'm going to be special. She said that, I'm going to show them. And then when I got to go, we had a family picnic and stuff, my mom brought my pictures from Washington, D.C. and showed them all. She said, see, I told her she was going to, I told you guys she's going to be special. She got to see the president.
Who was president at that time?
President Bush's father.
Big Bush.
Big Bush, yeah.
Well, that's a good story.
It is a good story. Any profound thoughts, any important things that you think we ought to have in tape?
That you want people who might be watching it to think about?
Think about, so thinking about the person's disability, to think about the person. They're always saying, this person can't do this because of disability, and this person can't do this because of disability, or this person can't do this because they're not physically, mentally, or handicapped and stuff like that. And they keep on saying that, and they say that, but this is thinking about the person, except the handicap or the mentally part and all like that. Put all that beside and just think that's a person. And a person just like any other person and stuff. They want to be treated the same. They don't want to be treated that they have to be put in the corner because of their disability or they're not physically handicapped and all that. They don't, and they can't think, and they have to be, can't go out to a movie and stuff and like that because of the handicap and stuff. They don't want to go out to a movie, they want to go out to eat, they want to go to a amusement park and stuff. It's like a group saved all their money all year round to go to Six Flags. When they went into Six Flags would not let them go on the rides because of their disability and stuff, because it wouldn't let them and stuff, and that made them feel bad and stuff because of that. And then this one, this one restaurant wouldn't let this young man come in because of his disability, because he tried to say that because the way he looked and stuff, because he wasn't physical perfect and stuff, because of stuff, and that they wanted to keep him they didn't have no seats and stuff, and him in the back of the part and stuff, and he wanted to sit in the front part and stuff and all. And it's just thinking, how do they feel and stuff if the shoe was on the other feet, There's like before we got the electric doors to Nova and stuff, we had the bosses and stuff, be put in chairs and stuff, and see how they liked it. And they tried to open the doors and stuff like that. And they couldn't do it and stuff. And they seen what we mean about, about the wheelchairs and stuff like that. And then, some of the places thinks because you don't work at the workshops no more and you get involved by doing changes and stuff, but helping out with changes to be done in the workshop and stuff. And they say, well, you're getting involved for, you don't work here no more and stuff. But you're there for your friends. You're there for the other disability people that won't speak up for themselves or can't speak up for themselves. But it's like this young man was getting abused and stuff. And I did not know at the time about anything. I know about a senior citizen got abused, about the people you could go to, but if a child got abused, you know. But as a disability person got abused, I didn't think there was nobody could do about it. So this young man always told me about he was getting abused at home by his mom and stuff. And then I didn't know what to do. One time he called me at home, he was telling me that his mom was abusing him and stuff. His mom got on the other end, and she was telling me I couldn't do nothing and stuff, you know. It was, and like that. I called my helper, and then they would send the cops out there and took care of him. And then the next day, I told him, and he was telling me, I said, you got to tell the social worker what's going on so they can help you. I said, I mean, I'm not the one getting abused and stuff. I said, now, I'll stay here with you, and you turn around and tell the social worker exactly what's going on at home and stuff. And then he did and stuff. And then they took care of it and stuff. And then later on, I found out that there was places that you could go to and ask for disability people who's getting abused and stuff. But I never known that. And stuff, I had to figure it out and stuff.
Do you watch TV much or the news much?
Sometimes.
Did you see all the rallies, all the people getting together about what they're talking about doing with the illegal immigrants and the aliens?
Yeah.
Did you see the thousands of people in Indy?
Yeah, because I just came from the doctor's office and we was right there in the middle of it.
So you saw that. So Mary Beth and I were talking about, wouldn't it be amazing? You know, these people have a big issue. They want to stay here. They don't want the president to send them back to their country, and they're here illegally. Yeah. And they all got together and they did this big protest. And we were wondering what it would take, you know, all the issues that people are unhappy about in the disability field. You know, all the things you've been talking about. You're not alone. A lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
So why do you think all the people with disabilities don't get together and do a protest march just like the aliens?
They feel intimidated. They don't think people would listen to them because of the disability, and they feel scared and stuff, and then stuff. They don't feel like they're strong enough, or people would listen or pay attention to them and stuff, because they think that their feelings don't count.
But in a way, it's really similar to the big march that we had, because those people had to have been scared because, you know, they're basically saying, here I am, I'm here illegally.
Yeah.
Some of them anyway.
I mean, like the big march they had down in Washington, D.C. that time me and Betty and stuff went to, and they had marches and they had signs and stuff like that, you know. And none of the big people, you know, the senators, the governors and stuff, would even seem like they even come out, you know, about it, you know. And they big march and had it in the park and stuff like that. Maybe a couple of them did, but, you know, not like they did with this, well, all these senators and governors and stuff. They came out, you know, for the big rally and stuff, and like they was really listening to that and stuff like that. But they seemed like they didn't pay no attention to us when we had ours, and like our feelings and stuff didn't count.
Well, it seems like that would be a good thing to kind of get people doing, you know, just pick a day, you know, sometime in the distant future and think, okay, everybody go to your town square.
Like, now the problems we had from the problem we was having at Garfield Park, okay, for our picnic, the problems we had last year with the bathrooms and stuff. Okay, they was giving me the runaround this year, the same thing and stuff, and the lady said that, you know, she gave me a bunch of different numbers, and I kept on calling them and stuff. The place that where the bathroom's at, and where we're going to have the bathroom at, is ran by a different place. And she said because they wasn't going to have no activities and stuff today, we're having our picnic, they couldn't open the bathroom, they couldn't open the doors for the bathroom. But they would see about having some porta potties and stuff. And then I said, no, we can't. You know, I ain't going through this. I don't see why. They said, call this other one. And then I got tired. I called the governor and talked to him, told him what was going on and stuff. And then I told him, I said, we feel like we was getting discriminated against, you know, that all disability it was not, they're not listening to us because of our disability and what happened last year and stuff. And she said that we'll take care of it and stuff. Then the lady from the Parks Department, the lady called me back and she said, didn't I tell you that I was going to take care of looking into it and stuff? And I said, but you didn't seem like you were interested in what I was saying and stuff. You kept on telling me that for 2 days and stuff. And I said, and no calls back and stuff. And I said, I went over your head and stuff. And I told him and stuff. And then now that she said, the bathroom doors are going to be open. We're going to have 4 accessible potties, 2 regular potties and stuff.
Good for you.
And so I was scared, but I was tired of getting to run around.
Produced by Center on Aging and Community, Indiana Institute on Disability and Community, Indiana University. Funded in part by a grant from the Indiana Governor's Council for People with Disabilities. Copyright 2017, the Trustees of Indiana University.